Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to be talking about Wrath of the Lich King. I'm going to be talking about how it compares to vanilla, ways in which it's no longer a classic expansion. And it feels a lot more like retail. And with that, I'm going to be covering a few major points. I think there's a lot of stuff I could get into. It could go on all day. But the main things I'm going to focus on in this video are the value of gold and how it affects how you're playing the game, the process of gearing up the power level of your character, and I'm also going to discuss items and specifically like quest design and how Blizzard is designing the gameplay experience in the two different expansions. So let's start from I think a big one and a simple one, which is going to be gold. You can see right here, I have 26,000 gold. I got a little bit of gold from selling some stuff for the guild bank, so about 6,000 of that is for my guild. But 20,000 of that gold is my personal gold, and I have basically done nothing the entire expansion except jewel crafting dailies. And I have not done a jewel crafting daily in a while. I just did a bunch early on. That's pretty much it. You kind of just don't spend gold in Wrath of the Lich King. You get gold from killing bosses, you get gold from doing quests, whether that be the daily dungeon quest, whether that just be some random thing you just happen to be doing. You just get a lot of gold. You don't really spend a lot of gold. Let me show you, for example, the prices of some of the materials in Wrath of the Lich King. In original vanilla, a flask cost typically over 100 gold, which because it costs a Black Lotus. In this game, our flask is going to be, let's see how much this goes for, 11 gold, which is, you know, even though it only lasts an hour, so you need to use 2, that'd be 22 gold. That's like 5 times cheaper than a vanilla flask. But the amount of gold you can earn from like a quest, if you look at these quests, you're getting like 20 gold from quests. You can do a lot of dailies very quickly and get gold very fast just from like doing dailies. I don't even do dailies, for example, and I just get a lot of gold from playing the game. So the point is, gold is extremely reduced value in Wrath of the Lich King. You run out of things to spend on it very quickly, unless you're really, spending a ton of money on a lot of characters, a lot of your alts crafting items, buying BOEs that are kind of luxuries that you don't even really need. Unless you're spending your money in that way, you're really not going to run out of gold. And gold is just almost infinite. I have never really thought much about farming gold except for earlier in the expansion when I did a little bit of mining. Again, we're talking like, I think I mined for like 2 or 3 days, a couple hours, 2 or 3 days at the beginning of the expansion, and leveled up my mining so that I could make Titan steel bars. And then I've done some jewel crafting dailies. It's pretty much it. You just really don't have a big use for gold. Now, this creates a ton of ripple effects because in original vanilla, the crafting was completely different, right? You had these flasks that were being created from Black Lotuses. You had lots of different consumes being used all at the same time, whether that be jujus or fire water, or if you were using like lots of different elixirs stacked and stuff. So you could be using elixir of mongoose while also using an agility item called Scorpok Assay. There was just a lot of potions being used, like rage potions for warriors, on and on and on, limited invulnerability potions as a defensive potion. The point is, in Wrath of the Lich King, it's very cheap to raid. In vanilla, it was very expensive to raid. It was expensive to play the game. The mount in Wrath of the Lich King, being 5,000 gold, is much easier to acquire than vanilla, the 1,000 gold epic riding mount. That used to feel like an achievement. And it even affected the economy to where people were out there herbing every day, mining every day. People are, fighting over Black Lotus spawns because of how expensive Black Lotuses were, how valuable they were. These are all just things that sound so foreign to a Wrath of the Lich King player. I think I know of one person in my entire guild who herbs or mines or skins or does any gathering whatsoever. I think one person, and I think I know of 2 people that fish, and that's it in my entire guild. No one's farming gold, no one's gathering, no one's doing any of those things. They just go to the auction house and buy whatever they want because it's all insanely cheap, and you're just getting gold from playing the game passively. So it's a completely different feel to the game, and it makes it feel like there's literally nothing to do outside of raid because there's no demand for the money. It's just a completely different experience with the gold. Piggybacking off the gold, I'm now going to go into kind of the gearing and how quickly it is to gear up and how it feels. So in vanilla, I played vanilla for the entirety time it was out, and from the very beginning, you were doing dungeons like Upper Blackrock Spire, and you were trying to get items like the two True Strike Shoulders. Now, I would continue to farm UBRS runs, either whether it be something for me, something for my guildie, whether we were trying to get like a Briarwood read for the casters. I was doing dungeons regularly for probably at least the first 6 months. And I would continue to do so after, but regularly, like daily, just always doing dungeons for people because these items, True Strike Shoulders, were best in slot for warrior. This reed trinket was best in slot for like every healer, every caster. Even items in Strathholm, like just random stuff. Ramstein the Gorger, this neck was best in slot for healers. You go down the list, and there are just tons of items that were really, really good. And it just kept you continuing to do these dungeons. Whereas if we contrast it with Wrath of the Lich King, while there is a few exceptions of powerful items from dungeons, really, I think the best one I can think of would have been a trinket from normal mode Culling of Strathholm called the Soul Preserver. Besides that, there's really not a lot that would ever keep you doing dungeons. And they've tried adding catch-up mechanics, Heroic Plus, but even just think of the pacing of this. This is going to blow some of the minds of some of the people that have not been playing Wrath of the Lich King and some of the players that are maybe used to playing vanilla. So I'm going to go show you a daily. Well, actually, you can just believe me. There's a daily quest for a dungeon that gives you 5 emblems of conquest. And you also get emblems of conquest from raiding. Now I'm going to show you the emblem of conquest vendor. And so again, you get 5 emblems of conquest per day from a daily. All right. And then we go to this guy. We have tier helm and tier chest, 25-man tier. You can just buy from a vendor for 58 conquest. Now, to be clear, that means in 12 days, you can get 60 emblems of conquest from doing dailies, and you can then purchase best in slot 25-man raid gear. That gives you tier set bonus. Now, the reason why this would be insane to a vanilla raider is 12 days is 2 weeks. On average, most vanilla players would not have a piece of tier in 12 days, let alone one they could guaranteed buy from a vendor. It's just completely different pacing, completely different feel. Now, you can argue that vanilla gearing was really rough because there were so many players and so little gear to go around. But I can tell you, items sure felt a lot more meaningful back in vanilla. It felt a lot more exciting to get certain items or certain upgrades, and felt a lot more exciting to complete your tier. Whereas now in Ulduar, not only do we have the ability to just straight up buy tier this easily, 12 days of dailies is nothing, by the way. You also obviously get it from raids as well. You can also get your tier to randomly drop from Vault of Archivon, which is a very easy raid. And just generally speaking, you gear up extremely fast in Wrath of the Lich King. I can give you guys multiple examples. I can't remember if this warrior has gone to 1 Ulduar 10 or 2. I can't remember. He's gone to either 1 or 2 Ulduar 10s, and I think I did 1 or 2 normal mode Ulduar 25s. I hit 4,800 gear score, and I'm in kind of some weird gear here. I'll also put my normal gear on. I hit 4,700 gear score in a couple weeks. Just pulling up to 80, run a couple dungeons, boom, there's the gear. I understand tanks gear faster than other classes, but you can buy a belt, you can buy boots. There's lots of BOEs you can get. This item's BOE, this item's BOE. I could have gotten a BOE cloak. I think I used it at some point. There's a BOE ring that I don't have, but I could have gotten. Long story short, the pace of gearing is so accelerated in the game. It really, in my opinion, devalues the feeling you accomplished or earned a very geared character, at least compared to vanilla. So the pace is just completely different. It affects how long you're doing pre-ribis gearing. And again, a lot of these things come back to there is nothing to do in this game outside of raid, unless you play arena. These are your options when you play Wrath of Lich King. You can raid, you can PvP, and then there's essentially nothing else to do. I mean, I guess if you're someone who just likes to do dungeons for the sake of doing dungeons, you can do them, but they're very easy and there's not really much reward. Likewise, if you just like doing quests for the sake of doing quests, or you just like gathering for the sake of gathering, I mean, you can do all these things, despite the fact that there's not really a big incentive. But in vanilla, this gameplay was much more incentivized, and you found a lot more people playing the game and a lot less people raid logging. Cool. Next, I'm going to talk about player power and just how it kind of changes the feel of things. And this affects dungeons as well. In Wrath of Lich King, tanks and healers are superheroes. And almost every class has AoE. DPS can just destroy massive packs of things. It really ends up adding up. For example, Death Knights are extremely hard to die. There's only a couple bosses in even the current Old War raid tier that me as a tank Death Knight that I could even potentially die to. Even if my healers aren't playing the game, I can self-sustain for a very long time on a lot of fights. There's really just a couple that I could die on. Something like Iron Council I could die on. Something like Algalon I could die on. But most other fights, it's kind of hard to genuinely die. Maybe Vezex you could also die on too. He hits pretty hard. But besides that, you can almost self-sustain as a Death Knight. Paladins have a cheat death when they die. They just come back to life every 2 minutes, which is incredibly broken. In terms of healers, you have Disc Priests can shield the entire group before they even take damage, which essentially means your entire raid can have thousands more health than it should have otherwise had. Your paladins, your holy paladins can heal so much so quickly. And basically because these tanks and these healers are so powerful, and because all of the DPS have a ton of AoE, it's to the point where if you're ever in a dungeon, you kind of can just pull everything and just AoE it down and just zug through the dungeon. Threat is easier to maintain. You're not really CCing things. You're not really thinking about what you're doing as much. You're kind of just smashing the dungeon. And then the pace of play speeds up as well, because obviously when you have tanks that are able to withstand more damage, and when you have healers able to output more healing, the raid bosses are going to continue doing more and more damage, dropping the raid faster and faster, to continue challenging those healers and those tanks. So what I'm getting at is the dungeon gameplay is just completely different. The pace of play is completely different, and it feels a lot more like a retail expansion than it would a vanilla expansion, with how much healing the healers can do, how much survivability the tanks have, how much threat they can generate. It just feels more like retail than it would vanilla. But yeah, those are the big things that I think just drastically change how the game feels. You know, in summary, just gold having no value kind of makes you just raid log and not ever farm. The gearing process being so fast gets you to the point where you're raid logging very quickly. Player power causes dungeons to be extremely easy, questing to be very easy, and not really put up any sort of fight. It's just a completely different game. It's not at all like vanilla, and that's why I think hardcore is booming. That's why I think vanilla era servers are getting more and more popular, is because people are looking for that classic experience, and Wrath of Lich King really is not it. In my opinion, Wrath of Lich King and retail are now relatively similar, in that and in how they play to a certain extent. I just think that retail is a lot more confusing and has a lot of new systems that are going to be complicated for a new player. And I also think retail is more, so Wrath is easier to get into. Retail is more confusing. And Wrath of Lich King is also typically just easier than retail. retail, it has a lot more challenging end game that, you know, would give you something, I guess, to maybe more to work toward. But a lot of the comments that like vanilla players or classic players used to say of like, go back to retail if you want your baby game. I would say, you know, and especially with how Wrath babies used to be a term used back in the day, it's kind of what they're describing is Wrath the Lich King. Wrath the Lich King is kind of that baby retail game where, you know, every class can like heal itself now. Everything can solo elites really easy. Quests are super easy. And gold has no value. Gearing is super fast. It just kind of trivialized everything about the game that was a challenge when it came to vanilla. So that is why I think Wrath the Lich King is not a classic expansion. It does not feel like vanilla. The biggest thing is it just doesn't feel the same. Like even just going around, you could say it's because there's all these new mounts that they've added in. You could complain that it's you know, just because of how easy it is to level to max level. It's not as much as an accomplishment to even have a max level character. The game just doesn't feel the same. There was something about vanilla that just like, you kind of always wanted to be on. You kind of just want to be on your character. You were going around farming things. There was always something to do. I feel like a lot of that is just lost in Wrath. So anyway, I'd be really curious to hear you guys' thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Probably going to release a follow-up video soon of kind of what I would like to see from vanilla, kind of like a vanilla plus, what I would like to happen, because I am a player that really enjoys the vanilla type of game and enjoys Wrath of Lich King a lot less. And I've got a lot of ideas on things I would like to see with a vanilla plus. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.